bestie. You would think that once a jury hands down a huge cheating verdict, everybody would go home, touch some grass, and log off. Absolutely not. In this case, the verdict was just intermission. The court said judgment entered, and both sides said, okay, now let's fight about what happens next. "30-second recap so we're all on the same page. Akira is the wife. Tim is the husband. Brenay is the influencer friend who's now married to Tim. Devin is Brenay's ex-husband and Tim's cousin. And yes, there's a twin sister named Corinne, and we've already talked about those high school ex and twin sister allegations in earlier episodes. In Akira vs. Brenay, a North Carolina jury listened to all of that and hit Brenay with a very large 7-figure judgment for alienation of affection and criminal conversation. That's the verdict from episode 1. Today is about what happens after you win a case like that, because Akira is trying to collect and Brenay is trying to rewind. First thing Akira does after the verdict, she does not just frame the judgment and put it over the mantle. She goes back to the court and says, okay, but how do we turn this piece of paper into actual money? That's where this comes in, a writ of execution. In plain English, a writ of execution is the court telling the sheriff, this judgment is real. You are now authorized to go look for this person's stuff and see what can legally be used to pay it down. That can include bank accounts, paychecks, cars, and other property, and sometimes even real estate. In this case, the judge signs off on a writ of execution for Brenay, listing the judgment amount, interest, and court costs, and sends it out to the sheriff in her county. Important nuance though, a writ means the search is allowed. It does not automatically prove that. Accounts have already been frozen, cars have already been seized, or the sheriff has successfully grabbed anything. We've seen the writ. We have not seen official paperwork saying, here is the exact list of property taken. So when you hear people online saying, her car is gone, the bank wiped her out, that might be speculation. Until there are actual receipts filed showing seizures, I'm not presenting that as fact. Now, while we're talking about money, let's address the thing that had the internet screaming $2. On the court's financial screen for this case, you see a giant judgment balance in Akira's favor, and under payments and credits, exactly $2. The timeline girlies saw that and said, not $2 on a 7-figure judgment. Here's the grown-up explanation. That $2 is almost certainly just an e-filing fee tied to one of Brenay's online court filings, basically the small processing fee you pay to upload a document through the court's portal. So no, she did not wake up and say, let me send a generous $2 payment on this enormous judgment. But visually, seeing a huge balance and then paid $2 is chaotic. The optics are giving, this is a tip jar, not a payoff plan. While Akira is out here activating the sheriff, Brenay is not just sitting at home watching it happen. She gets a new attorney, different from the one who handled the trial. And that new lawyer files a motion under Rule 59 of the North Carolina Rules of Civil Procedure. Think of a Rule 59 motion as, Judge, we know the jury reached a verdict, but we think something went seriously wrong. Please hit reset and give us a do-over. In her motion for new trial, Brenay's team tells the judge 3 big things. Ground 1, the damages were too much. They argue that the amount the jury awarded is so high it looks like it was driven by passion or prejudice, not just the evidence. In other words, they're basically saying the jury got emotional and punished her, instead of calmly calculating what the actual harm was. They don't have to say the exact dollar amount in the motion for that argument to land, and they just say, this is wildly excessive for this kind of case. Ground 2. There wasn't enough evidence of a loving marriage. For alienation of affection, the law doesn't just care that 2 people were married. It talks about there being genuine love and affection in the marriage that someone else destroyed. Brenay's motion argues Akira and Tim's marriage was already deeply strained. There were past issues, including prior infidelity and conflict. So even if Brenay and Tim did have an affair, she says you can't blame her for destroying a love that wasn't really there anymore. So that pitch to the judge is, this marriage was already crumbling. The evidence didn't really show a strong, loving relationship that my client could have ruined, so the verdict doesn't fit the law. Ground 3. My original attorney failed me. The third piece is about her first lawyer. In the Rule 59 motion, Brenay tells the judge, her trial attorney tried to withdraw multiple times close to trial. She says he didn't do real discovery or preparation. No meaningful document exchanges, no depositions, very little trial prep. She claims she ended up essentially going to trial unprepared and alone, especially compared to Akira's side. So the story there is, I didn't get a fair shot because my own lawyer didn't do the work and tried to leave right before trial. That's not just a bad outcome. That's a due process problem. When you bundle all that up, the message of the Rule 59 motion is, the verdict is too big, the proof was too thin, and the process was unfair. Throw it out and let's do this over. Akira's lawyer does not take that lying down. They file a response to the Rule 59 motion, and they also file their own motion asking for sanctions, attorney's fees, and costs. Let's break that down. Akira's response on the verdict itself. In the response, Akira's side basically tells the judge, the jury followed the law and was properly instructed. There was plenty of evidence about the marriage, the affair, the emotional and reputational harm Akira suffered. Just because Brenay doesn't like how high the number is, doesn't mean the jury was out of control. On the not a loving marriage argument, they point to testimony about the relationship between Akira and Tim, the timeline of the affair and separation. Evidence that, in Akira's view, there was still genuine love and affection in the marriage that got damaged. So their stance is, you might debate how you feel about these people, but the jury had real evidence to work with, and that's what they based their verdict on. Now here's where the new receipts come in. In an amended response and motion, Akira's lawyer says, let's talk about these claims that Brenay couldn't afford a lawyer. They point the court to Brenay's own bank statements from the months after her original lawyer withdrew. According to Akira's filing, those statements show tens of thousands of dollars moving through her accounts in just a few statement periods. A lot of spending on what they characterize as discretionary items, travel and flights, restaurants and takeout shopping, home decor, personal services, general lifestyle expenses, and then they make a key point. While saying she couldn't afford counsel in this seven-figure case, those same statements allegedly show her paying legal fees for Tim's custody lawyer in his separate case against Akira. So Akira's attorney basically tells the judge, she had money for trips, shopping, and even for Tim's lawyer. She just didn't choose to put that money toward defending herself in this lawsuit. That's not an injustice, that's a budgeting choice. Remember, that's Akira's lawyer's characterization of the bank statements, written in a court filing. We're not looking at her personal finances and dragging every line item. We're just explaining how one side is using those records in this fight. Because of all that, Akira's side doesn't just ask the judge to deny the new trial request. They ask for more. They file a motion for sanctions, attorney's fees, and costs, arguing that the Rule 59 motion is illegally weak. It's being used to delay enforcement of the judgment, and it forces Akira to spend even more money on lawyers to defend a verdict she already won. In regular people language, they're saying, Judge, not only should this motion fail, but the court should make them help pay our legal bill for having to respond to it, because this is a waste of time and resources. Sanctions are not automatic. Judges use a lot of discretion. But the fact that Akira's team felt confident asking tells you how strongly they believe this new trial request is out of line. All these filings aren't just living in somebody's Dropbox. There's a hearing date attached. The court has set a hearing for the Rule 59 motion and Akira's sanctions request for December 18, 2025 at the courthouse in Durham County. At that hearing, the judge is going to hear arguments from Brenay's side about why there should be a new trial, hear arguments from Akira's side about why the verdict should stand and why sanctions might be appropriate. A few things the judge could do. Deny the motion across the board. The jury's verdict stands. No new trial, no sanctions. Deny the new trial, but grant some level of attorney's fees or sanctions. The verdict stands, and you owe the other side money for making them litigate this. Grant a new trial, fully or partially. Something about that original trial was off. We're running this back. We won't know which way it goes until there's an official order, and when that drops, you know I will be right back here with the receipts. So why is this phase so important? Because it shows you that a big civil verdict headline is not the end of the story. What happens after writs, motions, enforcement, and sanctions is a whole saga on its own. The court isn't just looking at who cheated, it's also looking at who prepared, who showed up with evidence, who spent their money on what. And now we're in this moment where Akira is saying, a jury has spoken, let me collect what I'm owed and don't reward stall tactics. Brenay is saying, this verdict is unfair and I didn't get a real shot, hit reset. However you personally feel about these people, this is a live example of how old school tort law, social media fame, and real life finances collide once you step into the courthouse. Quick reminder before we close. I'm not a lawyer. This is commentary and education based on public court filings and publicly available information. When I say Akira alleges, or Brenay argues, or Devin says, I'm talking about their words in official documents, not my personal opinion. Everything is alleged unless and until a judge or jury has made a specific finding. And please do not use this series as a reason to harass, threaten, or dox anyone. We are here to read the docket, not ruin people's lives. Next up in this saga, we're digging deeper into the Devin side of things. How he says his marriage to Brenay fell apart, what it means when your spouse leaves you for your cousin, and how his own lawsuits fit into this very messy puzzle. So if you're still with me, hit follow, turn on notifications, and drop a comment. If you were the judge at this Rule 59 hearing, with the writ, the verdict, the bank records, and the $2 payment staring at you, would you give Brenay a new trial or tell her, ma'am, the jury has spoken? This is receipts and reasonable doubt, and babes, the docket is still very much open. Hey, it's your animated bestie, Hunny Hearsay. Don't forget, you can find me on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook at Hunny Hearsay so you never miss an episode of Receipts and Reasonable Doubt.